Hello, everyone, and welcome to Persistence Playbook. And on today's show, we have an in-demand keynote speaker. She is an expert in the world of plant-based medicine, and she's also the host of the Transformational Women's Retreat. And we're going to try and answer the question, how do we not allow negative self-talk to hold us back from creating our best self? Kate Strong, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Brett. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you, Kate. And, we've had this one on the books now for a little while, and I've had my eye on it, and I've been really excited about this conversation. And, let's start off with a soft toss, with an easy one, Kate. How do people get what they want out of life?
Well, first, Brett, you got to get clear on what you actually want. I believe that a lot of people are confused because they are living what they believe is the ideal, what their parents told them, what their teachers told them, maybe what, a professor or someone said, hey, this is how you create a great life for yourself. And oftentimes we're trying to fit ourselves into somebody else's ideal. And it just doesn't align. It feels like, gosh, there's just something missing here. There's a level of satisfaction or fulfillment that's not there. And so pulling that back is really about getting to know yourself and getting to know yourself so well and better than anyone knows you, so that whatever outside noise or influence or conversation is coming, we can pause and say, wait a second, that might work really well for them, or I'm so glad to hear that that's lighting this person up, but those aren't my strengths. Those things don't light me up. And so I always say there's no cookie cutter approach. It's not a one size fits all. We are unique individuals with a unique thumbprint. And as individual as our thumbprint, so is our path, if you will, to fulfillment and joy and happiness in life.
I completely agree. And, we are going to all find, our happiness, our fulfillment in slightly different ways. And you can't really just base your plan directly carbon copy off of somebody else's. And I guess, what are some of maybe the tools or specific tactics that you coach your clients on kind of tapping into that inner voice? How do we become a little better at listening to ourselves and getting to know ourselves?
I love this. Such a great question. So I have my own tools, and then I also use resources because I believe that there are brilliant people out there. And I always like to share what I use personally and then how I've integrated that or embodied that in my own life. So I have a process called Know Yourself. And in this process of really, really, truly getting to know ourselves, there are several assessments. One of those is the Clifton Strength Assessment. And as a certified Clifton Strength coach, I use it a lot with clients because, contradictory to what most believe, which is hard work equals success, I believe that it's about smart work and doing the things that come easy and natural to us. The problem is we devalue it. We don't recognize the things that come easy to us as being highly valuable because, it's too easy. It's like, doesn't everyone have this gift of gab, or doesn't everyone have this, strength? And the truth is, no, we don't all have the same strengths. And so using that assessment allows us to see what are our preferences, what comes naturally easy without even trying. So I'll give you an example. My number one strength is a maximizer. And as a maximizer, that means that I can take an idea and bring in all of the different pieces of it to really maximize the experience. And in fact, when you dive into this assessment, it also will go into like careers or different things that you could do in life that would feel very satisfying or fulfilling. And believe it or not, coaching or mentorship is one of the number one, jobs or careers for a maximizer. So even discovering that for myself, it was so validating. I felt seen. I felt understood. I felt like, gosh, this is who I am. Another strength of mine is a woo, winning others over, and communication and positivity. And you can oftentimes see me out and about or hosting a gathering or things like that. And people have said that they feel like when they're with me that it's just like really deep and really personal, and I'm just right here in this little bubble. And I used to see that as a weakness. I used to think wow, I walk into a room and I'm scanning and it feels overwhelming and there's all these people and I need to be able to get to everyone and say hi to everyone. And when I realized that no, my superpower is right here, one on one, talking about you specifically. Again, there's no like generic thing that I'm going to say to you, and the quality of the relationship versus the quantity is what lights me up. And so again, before I use this tool in my own life, I was trying to work harder to be better at something. In fact, Don Clifton in the 1950s is the one who came up with this assessment. He's a psychiatrist, and he said, what if instead of studying what was wrong with people, we started focusing on what's right with people? And I love that because it's like, I have sons. I have two sons. Their dad was a college basketball player, and these boys are out there shooting hoops and practicing. My oldest is not as good as my youngest naturally. He just isn't. He didn't get the hand-eye coordination, the mind. And so even watching these two, it doesn't matter how hard my oldest son practices. Naturally, he's not going to be, it doesn't come as easy. He's not going to be as good at it. So there's this moment as a parent that I take away my desire for him and what I want and say, okay, what is he really good at? Well, he's actually brilliant when it comes to mechanics, engineering. His brain is very like he can take things apart and put them together. And so as a parent, it's been really empowering for me to support my kids in their own strengths. But again, it comes back to getting to know ourselves and learning about ourselves. So that's where we start. There are many other different things to kind of wrap up what you asked. What is something someone could do, for example, to really listen to and get to know themselves? Sitting quietly. I often say it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in your driver's seat of your car where no one is. I think that's one of the few places we get to be where we have control over noise and
Sure,
input.
sure.
And so even just getting in your car and just taking a minute to exhale and just be in that and just like, I'm here. Okay. And then asking the question, what do you need? What do you need? Like, what do I need today? And you and I were talking earlier. It's like sometimes the
Love
answer
that.
for me is water. I just need hydration. It's like, gosh, my mouth's dry. I actually just need some water. Or sometimes it's like I've been shallow breathing all day. I haven't even paid attention to my breath. I'm just going to expand my lungs and ribs and like fully oxygenate my body so that my brain can work better, so that my organs can work better, so my body can function better. It's not these big, huge things. I believe that most people, when they think about change, they see themselves at the bottom of the staircase and they're like, this is where I want to go, at the very top. And they see that and it's like, I don't know how to get there. And that seems really overwhelming. And we just say, hey, that's a great goal, right? But what if we just look at that next step? What's the next best thing you can do? What's one micro movement or shift in behavior that you can adopt every day? And coming back to water and hydration, what if you just commit every single morning, first thing in the morning, to get your body going by drinking 12 ounces of water? We are like those old computers in like the 1980s or the 1990s, Oregon Trail. You pushed on the button, the Apple computer. It's like, whoa, right? You remember? It's like, whoa, it's got to
Of
warm up.
course. Great game. Great game.
Yeah, yeah, I got to warm up. So we need to warm up. Our body's been asleep all night. We've been, intaking and exhaling less oxygen. And if you can hydrate and oxygenate your body first thing in the morning, it sounds so simple, but it clears energy. There's less brain fog. There's your organs are lubricated. Your brain is activated. And again, that's a small, tiny micro shift in behavior that's doable. And when we choose to do things that are doable, we also get a win early in the morning. And I don't know about you, but I feel so great in the morning when I'm like, I've already accomplished something and I have a win for the day. The rest of my day is kind of smooth sailing versus that feeling of like, oh, there's something I need to do. Like I still haven't done that thing yet, or I'm going to get to it later, or I'll do it later. And then we get in this shame and guilt cycle and it's just a whole thing. So
Yeah,
that's
I
one
totally
simple,
agree.
easy way. Yeah.
100%. And I think I just want to kind of recap because you really, had a lot of value in there. And I totally am feeling maximizer and woo coming off of you, by the way. So I can assure you this test is very accurate. So we're definitely going to link that in the show notes because everyone needs to take this test. I'm going to take it for sure. And yeah, figure out what your strengths are because we all have different strengths. Like you said, one of your sons is a little better at basketball. The other has other innate talents. And if we can really figure out what those strengths are, whether it's the gift of gab or maybe we're great at building systems and processes on the back end, figure out what your core 2 or 3 strengths are and lean into those strengths, and then find partners that perhaps can take on some of those other skills that aren't in your wheelhouse of innate talents. And that's how you can really build something special. But if we try and force a circle into a square peg and we're just trying to, be something that we're not, I think we can get better at that for sure. But there's going to be a ceiling. There's going to be a ceiling on how good we can get at something if there's really not much innate talent there at all. So I love that idea of figuring out what your core strengths are. I think taking that test could be huge. And then, yeah, sure. Square off some time in the morning to just bank on some early wins, whether that's meditation, whether that's getting sunlight, whether that's exercise, or even just drinking 12 ounces of water. I think those habits, just really kind of pounding on those pillars of life. And for me, those are kind of the things I like to do every day. It's hydrate right in the morning. It's exercise every morning. I like to eat a big green salad every day. And if you can kind of just pick out those 3 or 4 real life serving habits and make sure you hit them every single day, no ifs, ands, or buts, then I think over time, you're just going to see a more powerful self that comes to the table on a daily basis. You're going to see yourself rise to the occasion more often. And, I want to, kind of touch on, negative self-talk a lot because I know it's a topic that you have done a lot of research on, that you speak of a lot in your content, and we all have it. I think some of us have it more than others. I think some of us really battle negative self-talk throughout the day. And I think some of us, maybe if we were raised with very, very supportive parents, perhaps maybe we don't deal with it as much as others, but we all have a little voice in the back of our head that's telling us we can't be everything we want to be. I don't want to say how do we combat negative self-talk because it's going to be there, but like, how do we work with negative self-talk and not allow it to hold us down?
This is such a great question. I spend a lot of time in this. The first thing, Brett, is expect it. Expect it. It's going to come. When we don't expect it, or we think, oh, I know better now. I know better. And then it comes. If we don't expect it, we say to ourselves, here I am again. I should have known better. I'm doing it again. I'm just so critical. And then we get in this shame and guilt cycle that is really where most people get stuck. And then it feeds the negative self-talk. It feeds the criticism. It exacerbates it and makes it even worse. And so oftentimes when people have an aha moment or clarity, or they go to a workshop or they take an online course and they know better because they have the information now, the real practice is integrating that. How do you embody this new concept or idea? So for example, right now talking about negative self-talk, well, expect it. So our subconscious brain has 2 functions. The first is to keep us safe, and the second is to prove us right. Okay. And if we are in our brain of negative self-talk and we're on this, this programming, because it is 100% programming, we get to become, number one, expect it. Like, of course my default is negative self-talk. The negative self-talk is usually there to keep you safe. And it's usually there to keep a younger version of you safe. There's a moment in your life that something happened and it was traumatic or scary or whatever it was, but your subconscious said, this is not safe. We're not going there again. And I'm going to remind you and prove you right over and over and over and over again. Don't ever do that again. So when we become safe, okay, and that's a whole nother podcast maybe, or we can go deeper, but when you can find safety and you feel safe, you can allow yourself to observe that negative self-talk and go, okay, well, I knew it was going to be here, so here I am. Number 2, just become aware. What is it actually saying without trying to fix it, without trying to change anything? You just bring in what I call as owl energy, this owl, this observer kind of perched on a tree of like kind of watching. And it's like if you could like rise above yourself, if your higher self, if you will, could look down on you and just witness your brain and your thoughts. And you are not your thoughts. And that's another really important thing to remember. We are humans. We have 4 bodies: our physical body, our mental body, emotional body, and spiritual body. So when you cannot identify yourself fully with your thoughts, that's also really helpful, because you now become this observer of your thoughts. You're aware and hearing that dialogue. And if you notice that you have some really negative self-talk coming on, and you want to go deep, just ask yourself, where is this coming from? Curiosity is the antidote for all of this. When we believe that we already have the answer, it shuts off any inspiration or intuition, inner wisdom to come in. But if we become curious and open that up and say, where is this coming from? Just see what starts to happen, see what starts to come. And oftentimes you can go back to an experience where that felt unsafe, or that felt like someone else said that to you. Maybe you hear someone else's voice in your head telling you that, and you're like, wow, that didn't even come from me. That came from like something else, like a long time ago. And so curiosity and compassion are the 2 things that I would say we need to adopt in this. I have a whole process of how you actually reprogram your mind and reprogram these negative thoughts, because it is doable. But like anything that we've been talking about, Brett, it takes consistency and showing up, and this awareness of going, oh, here I am again. And then what happens is, as we go through this cycle of shifting that and replacing that negative thought with a better feeling thought or a more truthful thought, then over time, it becomes less often that you're doing the criticizing, and for shorter amounts of time. And that is how we actually change and transform and reprogram this autopilot there. But again, if we're critical and we're criticizing ourselves, we're just feeding into the thing that we're really trying to not do. And so grace, we just get to give ourselves a lot of grace and compassion, because again, there's just this younger version of us, this inner child that's really wanting to keep us safe.
I think that is a really powerful framework for dealing with negative self-talk, right? Expect it. It's going to happen. It's part of the human experience. B, kind of watch it from like a third party perspective. Don't associate yourself with these thoughts, because you are not your thoughts necessarily. And then, the third step would just be, eventually, when you get really good at those first 2 steps, work to actually replace that lie with a truth, and ask yourself, where is this negative self-talk coming from? Because it's probably deeply seated in a childhood event or something that happened to you early in life. And then replace it with some truth. And the fact is, whatever positive quality we're trying to work on in ourselves, there's probably some proof on our resume that we already have that quality. You know what I mean? Like, if we want to be more courageous, I bet every one of us can think of 3 to 5 instances in our past where we were really friggin' courageous. And it's important to remind ourselves of that proof. I think that's the stuff that really kind of, enables us to be more courageous in the future. If we remind ourselves of, oh, wait a second, I've done that. I've been that person before. And this negative self-talk is referring to maybe one instance in my past, but I've got 6 other things I can think of right now that actually go against it and remind me that I am a courageous being. I think that's a really, really powerful framework for anyone to kind of implement that is dealing with a lot of negative self-talk right now.
100%. And you just said something really powerful. What we focus on grows. So if we're focused on not being courageous, you're going to find evidence. Remember, this is the number 2 function of the subconscious, is to prove you right. So if you believe that you are not courageous, that you're not brave, or whatever those words are, you're going to find evidence. You will absolutely find times in your life over and over again where you weren't. But if you flip that and you focus on, when are the times that I was courageous, you now start finding evidence for that. And so that's a really powerful switch where you can just shift. It's like you literally just turn your head. I often show people this. I don't know if you can see it, but I have both arms out. And it's like, if you're looking to the right, and that's one perspective, or you turn and you look to the left, it's a different perspective. you can choose either one, right? One is going to feel a lot better than the other one. So choose the better feeling thought. Choose the evidence, as you said, or look at those times in your past where you've done it. It's like, wait a second. Yes, I have done that. I have been courageous. I've just got this little scared girl or boy inside of me that's like, oh, I don't want you to put yourself out there because you might get hurt or you might fail or you might be embarrassed. And again, just reminding ourselves, no, I've been courageous before. And here are the examples. I love that you said that. In fact, writing those down could be really empowering, to be able to look at that and remind ourselves. You know, people often ask me, Kate, what mantra should I say? Or what affirmations should I, you know, practice and listen? This is a great way to make it really personal. If
For sure.
courage is what you want, write down 3 to 5 affirmations around courage that actually have been your experience, that you then look and say over and over and over again, because there's a connection there because you've actually embodied that before. And those are some of the most powerful affirmations. The ones that we write down in hope that we can experience are helpful, but it takes a lot longer to get there because the body doesn't remember that experience quite yet. But if you can find an experience in your life where you've already felt that, it will, again, here we are back to me wanting to maximize things. It really will just create a potency of that affirmation, unlike something that hasn't been tangible in your life before.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do. And kind of piggybacking off of that, something that you talk about sometimes is, sure, put in the work, enjoy the journey, trust the process, but like really trust the fact that like, if you put in the work, that the universe has your back.
Yeah.
And how do we kind of make that mind shift,
Mm.
that mindset shift? Whereas if I just do what I need to do, how do we trust that the universe has our back? And how does that help us?
That's a great question. We have to believe it. You know, if you're just saying the universe has my back, and again, it's that thing like, I hope it does. I hope the universe has my back. I hope it does. I think it does. Other people say it does, but I don't really know. There's a disconnect, right? There's like, it's almost like you're still saying to the universe, I don't actually trust you, prove it. But in my life, the thing that's helped me a lot is that I'm in partnership with God. And this is a new thing for me, Brett, because I left organized religion 10 years ago, and my idea of God was very different than my idea of God today. And again, it doesn't matter what your idea of God is, and it doesn't matter if you say creator, God, universe, love, whatever. It's about the feeling. It's about what does that word bring about inside of you, because it's all energy. And if I feel that I'm in partnership with God, then I trust that the universe and God have my back. So let me give you an example. I have a retreat coming up in May, and I have 3 spots left for that retreat. And if I walk up to my altar every morning and light the candle, and I partner in that moment with God and say, use me, God, use me, and align me with anyone who's called to do this work. And then I trust it. It's a very different energy than me waking up in the morning and being like, oh, I got to get 3 more people signed up for this retreat. Like, where am I going to find them? I need to post more. I need to put myself out there more. There's a very different energy and trust versus hustle.
For sure.
And for me, I want to be in partnership with the universe. Now, I want to say this very clearly. It is a trust fall that feels so inspired, and then you jump, and as you're falling, sometimes that confidence or that like remembering of that, like that inspiration starts to fade. We question ourselves, we second guess ourselves. It's kind of like, are you really here, God? Is this really happening? Because as humans, we want our timing to be the timing and
Sure.
not always the universe. And so it's like, I feel like this needs to happen because I've got a deadline that's a very timely, third dimensional kind of thing here. But again, it's this like allowing. And the beauty in all of this, Brett, is that For me, it's now no longer a trust fall, but a trust walk. So I can literally just say, it's like, okay, we're doing this, but there's action. And that's the difference. The trust fall, you're helpless. You feel like you have no control. You're free falling. The trust walk is, what is one thing I can do today to align with this desire? What is one thing I can do today to quiet down, to listen to the universe saying, pick up the phone and call this person, walk in this place or whatever that is. So there's a different way of navigating that I've learned, where I feel like it's more of a trust walk than it is a fall. And to even give context to this in a story, how many years ago was this now? Probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I had an experience where I was I'd been divorced for a few years, and my ex-husband was in jail, had just gone, and my mom was living with me, and I'm this single mom. I'm not really fully immersed in my career because I was running a nonprofit at the time, and just passion project. And I had just started kind of putting myself out there and helping with some media and marketing and things like that, a company. And my mom called me and she said, get home right now. There's an emergency. And, I'm driving, my heart's just pounding. I'm like, oh no, what else? Like, what else could be happening? And I walked in my house and my ceilings were on the floor. My whole house was flooded. There was
Oof. Oof.
feet of water, like I'm walking through water. There's like pictures of my kids floating and stuff, like toys and stuffed animals, and just a lot. It was really, really intense. And my girlfriend came over and we were standing in the front yard, and she said, Kate, I'm so sorry. How could this be happening? Like, how? You've got so much going on. And in that moment, I recalled a book I had just been reading 3 weeks ago. I'd gone, it was spring break, and I decided I was going to read this book called The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. And in that book, she says something really powerful. She says, what if you can reframe something? Instead of saying, how is this happening to me? Ask, how is this happening for me? And so if my hands lifted literally to the sky, and back then I didn't have the relationship with God I do today, I was kind of like, you know what? I don't know if I like you. And I just put my arms up and I just said, how is this happening for me? How? Like, how? And interestingly enough, as I became curious, right? Because curiosity opens up inspiration. It opens up things in our lives to see something differently. I started seeing things, and the first big thing that happened was the restoration company came over. And so the guy's walking through doing the assessment with me, and then he says, well, let's sit down and talk about, what you want. And he's like, so let's talk about the carpet. And I'm like, I have no idea. This house is like 12 years old. I don't even know about that carpet. And he goes, well, wait a second. He's like, you don't have to pick the same carpet. He goes, you don't have to pick the same wall color. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, wait, what? Okay, what? And what you get to know, Brett, is I had been literally praying and saying, like, I just need a change. I just need a change. I was in the same house I was married in. There was a lot of triggers and feelings and just a lot of that old energy.
Sure.
But I didn't dare move because my kids had been through a divorce and their dad was now in jail. And the last thing I was going to do is uproot them out of their home and their neighborhood and like, hey, let's give you lots more trauma here. And so it was really God, the universe, saying, hey, let me do my work. Your house is going to flood, but insurance is going to pay for you to literally redo it. And the timing, it was in spring. And it was also like really cool because it was water, which symbolically is cleansing and renewal and rebirth. And so that question, asking, how is this happening for me? And trusting that the universe's plan is bigger than mine allowed me to see that whole situation very, very differently. And I could have been the victim. I could have, it very easily. I had plenty of people saying, I'm so sorry. I cannot believe this is happening to you. This is so unfortunate. Like, I'm just so sorry. And we can easily find ourselves kind of like stuck, literally stuck in that victimhood, and just reframing that and saying, how's this happening for me? And trusting that, you know what? God is good. The universe has my back. Um, and I believe that everything's happening for me. It literally changed the trajectory of my life. It also changed my content, what I coach about, what I teach about, because it is one of the most empowering questions we can ask ourselves.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that story about your house flooding. I could see you getting a little emotional, honestly, while you were telling it. I can tell it was kind of a moment of inflection in your life. And I do think that is a powerful question that we can always ask ourselves in troubling moments where there's adversity in front of us, where things don't seem to be going our way. How is this happening for me? What if this was a gift? Let's turn it 2% in that direction. And in most cases, we really can find some positive, and we can think of a scenario of why the universe is making this happen and how it is eventually going to benefit us. How is this happening for me? What a powerful question that we could ask ourselves multiple times throughout really any day.
Any day, and especially in the moments that feel challenging or negative. I think in those moments the most, it's just like, and just shifting that will really, again, it goes from this victimhood to empowerment. And every day there are opportunities to ask that question. I mean, literally, if you're driving in traffic, right, and things are slowed down and you're going to be late to the meeting, and it's just like, I'm late, and I'm so focused on being late and not being on time, versus, okay, I have no control over this. I don't get to navigate traffic. So, like, how is this happening for me? And I'll do this, and I'll literally think to myself, oh, cool, now I can finally call that person back. Or, oh, great, I didn't think I was going to have time today for this specific thing, but turns out now I have an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This is a really simple thing, but I'll tell you, it's been life-changing for me. So I'm a mom of four, and I have my kids are involved in lots of different things. And oftentimes, especially with football practice, the coach goes over, okay? Almost always. And it used to drive me nuts because I'm like, I got things to do and places to be. And like, I don't care if you're going to be late, but tell me to be here at 6:15 instead of 6, because I'm just sitting here. So what I did, Brett, is I have tennis shoes in my car. And every time I'm now waiting on anyone, I don't care if I'm at Starbucks and we've got a meeting and the person texts me, they're like, hey, I'm running behind, or if I'm at football practice, they're running behind. I put my tennis shoes on, I move my body. And
I
it's
love it.
been really great, because a lot of times, how often are we saying to ourselves, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time. You can always put on tennis shoes and move your body, always. And so that time stacks up too. Like, I'll get 15 to 30 minutes in a day of extra time to move my body, because I'm not waiting, right? Or I'm not so frustrated because, this negative thing is happening to me. It's pretty empowering.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of your online brand is the tennis shoes in the trunk. I've seen it many times, and you post an Instagram story and there are the shoes in the trunk, and you're not right. You're making the most of the moment, and you're going to get some movement, and you're going to get some steps in. And I think it's something we could all do in really almost any day. Let's say you have 30 minutes blocked off for calls. You can take those calls outside with your AirPods on. You can walk a couple miles, and at the end of that call session, you're going to feel energized as opposed to depleted. I think that we can always fit a little bit more exercise into our daily schedule than we do. And I love the shoes in the trunk. It always cracks me up whenever you post the photo of the shoes in the trunk. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about creativity. I know it's a topic that you're passionate about, and you've hosted groups and retreats specifically on this topic. And for any of us that are like small business owners or content creators, what are the practices that we can implement to just more regularly tap into our innate creativity?
Mm-hmm. I love this. Creativity is something that that's within all of us. And we are creating even when we don't realize we're creating. And I often will say, like, you're either creating from as baseline as it can get, love or fear. And what I mean by that is, even when you choose not to do something because of fear, you're still creating a response based off fear. You're still choosing not to do the thing because there's fear. Or on the flip side of that, the opposite would be, I'm trusting, I'm creating from love. I believe that the universe has my back. So I'm going to do this trust walk, even if I'm not quite sure. So how do we do this? The number one thing is to get quiet. I like to do time blocking. So especially as creators out there, creating specific blocks of time every week that is just going to be focused on creation. I'm going to turn on my favorite music that brings in creativity, that helps me feel alive. I'm going to dress in a way that is in alignment with whatever energy and vibe I want to bring into this thing. So I talk a lot and I work a lot with the divine feminine, and how, as women in a world of boss babe energy, how do we not take on too much of this masculinity but bring in the feminine, and how do we dance with that, right? Because there's a very organized masculine structure to running business for a reason, and it's not about choosing to not engage in that or not embody that, but at least knowing that that's what we're doing, and not because we feel like, oh, this is the way it has to be done, but I'm choosing these things in my creation. And a lot of creation is feminine energy. So men out there, women out there, we both have masculine and feminine energy within us, right? There are characteristics or qualities that we would say masculine qualities would be like a checklist, very structured. The process, you mentioned that earlier, find out what you're good at and then hire or have other people on your team that can do certain things. So usually someone who is an operator or a processor, things like that, they're very much in that masculine energy. And we need that. We totally need that. In fact, we need to be able to do it so we can get shit done, right? It's like, that's part of it.
Correct.
Right? And there's also this very feminine energy, which is creation. So if we're talking about femininity and we're talking about creation, it's about being slower. It's about activating your five senses. So when you're thinking about creating something, and for me, it's an experience, what's it going to smell like? What are people going to feel like? What is it going to look like? What are we going to taste, or how are we going to activate those senses? So when you can give someone an experience where there are all five senses engaged, they're going to embody and remember that differently than if those things aren't part of the creation. So bringing in the five senses in creation, and it starts with you. So whatever you want to create, you need to be that. You need to embody that, because this is the key to not having to actually sell anything, because you just are it. And that this is how things just come in. And so again, if you're doing a creative session, listen to music that vibes with the thing that you're wanting to create. Light a candle or spray cologne or whatever it is, but really give yourself an opportunity to almost create this like mini experience. Another big one is vision, and I call it vision casting. And if you will sit and imagine what you want in detail, bring in the five senses. What does it smell like? Right? What do you see? What is the energy of the people in that room? Who do you see in that room? Who do you want? And you just start vision casting and imagining yourself being there. You will create what you want. And this comes back to your comment earlier about our thoughts, right? And why that is so important to be aware and to know what you're thinking about, because that's part of creation, right? We're creating that by default, and we don't even realize that. So just as much as being intentional about what we want to create, also be aware of like what you're creating without even realizing it or knowing it.
I love that. And I think that's really good advice. You know, if you're struggling a little bit with resistance to some type of creative endeavor, whether it's writing a blog post, maybe it's writing some content, you know, light that candle, you know, put on some music that you know is going to put you in that creative flow. I think, right, kind of tantalizing the five senses can really kind of put you in that creative flow, in that creative energy, as opposed to just sitting down at the computer and being like, okay, Brett, be creative. You know, it doesn't exactly work that way.
You just said something I want to hone in on. Creation isn't about the mind. This is the thing. When you sit down with a piece of paper and you're like, I'm going to create this blog post, and it's like, okay, what should I say? Or it's like trying to do it the way someone else did it. That's where you get caught in your mind and you're second guessing, you're having all these things. If you can get out of your mind and open up that channel to the to source energy, to the universe, to creation of all, put your feet on the dirt if you need to, connect with Mother Earth. But when you can open yourself up to that and let things flow through you, the creation will come. And this is, again, this is a creation is about trusting, because if you're creating something, oftentimes it hasn't been done before, or it hasn't been done the way you're going to do it, or it's not going to be said in the voice that you have to offer. So there's no blueprint, there's no roadmap, there's no checklist of how to do it. It's about you trusting what comes from inside of you. And that is why creation is so empowering and also scary, because you're like, I don't know, what if people don't like this? What if they don't want this? What if it's a great idea to me, but no one else wants to participate? That a lot of that second guessing can come. And this is where we really learn, and taking this all full circle, this is how we get to know ourselves. You know, it's like, and trust yourself, because you're listening to your own inner guidance and your own intuition and your own inspiration to come. And it's just the seed. And then you get to nourish that seed by going back and saying, okay, so what else? For example, when I create a retreat, I start creating the retreat the minute I decide what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. And then it unfolds. And I don't have all the clarity when I decide to do it. I just decide that, okay, this is something that I want to do. And then, you know, we're just a few weeks out now, and I'm creating, you know, I decided the other day, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get these little jars and put honey in them. And we're going to do a charcuterie, and we're going to do a Best Bites experience where everyone closes their eyes and taste every bit of that cracker and that pepper jelly and that cheese and that meat and that, you know, and like a ratatouille, boom, right? Ratatouille's like, woo. And then they get to take home this little jar of honey to represent that. I wasn't planning on that 6 months ago at all. But as this creation has, you know, unfolded, new ideas come, new inspiration comes, and that's creation. It's not a one and done. It's a constant state of flow, and allowing ourselves to revisit that, revisit that, revisit that, revisit that. And that's why I love the time blocking, because it's intentional. We decided, okay, I always say light a candle to make it sacred. So you light the candle, you've got the music, a warm glass of tea or water or whatever you love, and just really allow all of that to come in, and revisit it.
Yeah, no, I love all of that, and I think kind of like you said with inspiration, I do think with anyone who's a great creator is also exposing themselves to new ideas on a regular basis. I think a lot of having very creative output is going to be with how many interesting ideas are you exposing yourself to on a regular basis, whether that's podcasts or books or conferences. You got to consistently be learning if you want to be teaching in a creative way. And I think that's one part that I think some people leave out, is they just think all of this like innate creativity is just going to come from within us out of nowhere, when I think it becomes a little bit less friction if we just expose ourselves to new ideas on a regular basis, and then we add our own experiences and perhaps previous learning to those ideas, and then we teach them as our own. And I think that's a big part of being a great creator. And I want to talk about productivity a little bit before we end, because you've talked about time blocking a lot. And I think anyone who's a really high performer like yourself, I'm always kind of curious, what their system is for getting things done. I mean, you're on podcasts, you're coaching very successful clients, you're hosting retreats. I mean, you are doing a lot of things on a daily and weekly basis to push your business, to push your brand forward. So what does your productivity system look like? Do you time block out every day, every second of the day? Do you have a to-do list on the side? Like, what does that look like in process for Kate Strong?
Yeah, this is great. So I do a self-mastery online course. It's a 12-week course, and we customize these blueprints in 5 pillars. And it's all about choosing something in each of these 5 pillars every single day. And I do it myself. And so it's my physical body, my mental, my emotional, my spiritual, and then socially, my relationships, connections to people. And it's something that I do every day, and being very, very clear on what they are. Now, doing this is really, really powerful. And also, oftentimes when people decide, and myself included, many, many years ago, when I would decide to start a new thing, I would say something to myself like, we'll start with physical. Okay, I'm going to start going to yoga 5 days a week or every day or whatever I said. Well, the reality is that if I already had that hour and 20 minutes in my schedule, I would probably already be doing it. And so adding something big like an hour class with a 10-minute drive each way is something that's going to be really, really hard to maintain consistently. So then what happens is we fail, and then we get in this shame cycle of, oh, here I am again. I never complete things. So for me, it's 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Each of those 5 pillars, we find something you can do in every area that's only going to take you 20 minutes. And because I'm a maximizer, Brett, I'm always thinking about how can you do multiple things. So let me give you an example. For me, it's mindful movement. It's moving my body every day. When I'm moving my body, that's physical, but it also really, really helps me process things in my brain. And so when my body is moving, my brain is also moving. And so if I ever have something that I'm feeling stuck or stagnant, I walk out my front door and I start moving my body. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, this is how I could articulate this, or that is what I'm saying. Or maybe it's just a big emotion that comes up in my life, because sometimes big things come up or triggers come up and I'm like, whoo, okay, I do not want this to consume me all day. I need to start moving it. And so that movement for me every day is really, really important. And I've learned that about myself. I also mentioned yoga, because yoga for me covers all 5 pillars. It's my physical body, my mental body. It allows emotions to move through me. It's also very spiritual and social. So anything I can do that I can find that can hit multiple pillars for me is a big bonus or a win. And the other thing I want to say about productivity, I have a different relationship with it than I used to, because productivity used to feel very checklist for me. It was like, I'm really productive if I can check everything off my list today. The problem is when I'm so focused on the checklist, things can sometimes become less meaningful or robotic a little bit. And the experience that I'm actually looking for that I had in the beginning isn't now quite as potent as it was, right? So I switch it up. So what I'll do is, for each of those pillars, I might have 2 or 3 things that I really like or that I really enjoy. And then it gives me an opportunity to choose, okay, what sounds good today? And that for me is more authentic. And it's also ultimately what I'm teaching everyone, that's everything is inside of you, everything. And how do you unlock that? You have to start asking yourself, what do you need? And here's the thing, for my mental, sometimes I need a podcast. Sometimes I want to just quiet my mind and get the noise to turn down so that I can just pause the thoughts for a moment. Those are 2 very different things, and it depends on what's going on in my life. And like you said, if I'm in creation, if I'm like, oh, I want inspiration, I want to be inspired, I'll listen to a podcast and someone will say something. I'm like, oh, yes, that is. And then I go deeper. But if I've got a lot going on in my life and there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of input and there's a lot of chaos, I need to just chill and let things be super, super quiet. So this is my platform, which is ask yourself. and knowing and being able to check in and saying, okay, this feels good to me today. But the key to succeed at this is you have to have an action plan. You have to have thought about it before and say, okay, what are a couple of things I can do physically every day as an option? What are a couple of things I can do mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially? And then I can decide, well, what feels good to me today? For example, I'm going to go to the social pillar. I can write a thank you card or a note of encouragement to someone. I can send a Marco Polo. I can do an audio message. I can go to an event and network or socialize. But some days I'm not feeling like I want to be out in a crowd of people. And if my only option for my social self-care was that, I would somehow be setting myself up for failure. But I can sit down and write a heartfelt card to someone, especially if I'm in my feels that day and feeling like super emotional. It's probably the ideal time to do that instead of putting myself out there physically. Does that make sense?
100%, 100%. I love that you ask yourself these questions, what feels right today, or when you're in the car, what do you need? I think asking ourselves better questions is going to ultimately be how we get to know ourselves on a more intimate level.
Definitely, definitely. And it's a journey within, right? And again, coming back to that compassion, and what feels good to you. And sometimes even with the productivity, coming back to like it's that thing on the list that we keep avoiding. Ask yourself, am I avoiding this because it feels hard or I don't know what to do? And if that's the case, maybe that's when you're like, I need someone to come in and help me with this. Like I just keep getting stuck on this specific thing because it feels like I don't even know where to start, versus am I just finding myself stuck because whatever the reason is. And even learning that is that it's again more of what you're talking about, this process of getting to know ourselves. And it's okay to say, you know what, I've been doing this thing for a long time because it helped me feel accomplished or productive. But ask yourself, what's your satisfaction level? Like, how satisfied are you in doing that thing? And maybe it's a thing that you just feel like I don't need to, I can let that go. I can give that up.
Kate Strong, thank you for being with us today. You absolutely brought it, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you for reaching out. It's a pleasure to be on.
Where can people catch up with you and see all you're up to?
Yeah, follow me. I am in my own DMs in Instagram, Kate Strong World. I love communicating and connecting there. I'm often offering things. I have some really great, fun, exciting momentum for what's coming. So stay tuned. I've got some teasers and announcements out there, so you can find me there. I'm online, My Strong World or katestrongworld.com, and would love to stay connected. Thanks for the opportunity.
There it is, guys. This has been Persistence Playbook, and friendly reminder, there will be resistance to the important work you need to do this week. Acknowledge that resistance and take action anyway. We'll catch you next week. Take care.